Without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Patrick Dell. Patrick, I'm going to just introduce you very briefly. I met Patrick not too long ago. He's been a field service professional for a long time at medical device and medical equipment companies, and really has some amazing, simple experiences that he can share, which when you think about what's going on, when I talked about no one knows, it's like, no, we actually know what to do. We just need to pay attention to the fundamentals. So without further ado, Patrick, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to let you start sharing. And more importantly, you maybe give yourself a little bit more of an introduction beyond what I just explained with that introduction to you. So over to you, Patrick.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. So I'll share my screen here real quick. And as I do that, I'll just a little bit more introduction of myself. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so my name is Patrick Dell. I've been with Varian going on 22 years now. And so all that time has been spent in providing service to customers, basically either directly at a local level or overseeing service throughout different areas. And currently, throughout the Americas, I have several different responsibilities, as you can see on the slide there. But fundamentally, it all comes down to the same thing. It's taking care of customers and ensuring that we are meeting our commitments and focusing on the right things. So I appreciate everything Nick said. I was sitting here writing notes and thinking, wow, this is good stuff. And one major aspect of it that he said is these are basic things that we know, but I think it's encouraging to be reminded. And so that's kind of my purpose today. Is when Vivek and I talked about what I could bring to the presentation here, is just what are those things that we can do when there's so much that we can't control on what's going on. And so, let's just face it, we know that success in business, I would say one of the fundamental things is when leaders can, or business leaders can predict what's going to happen, whether some changes or challenges are upcoming, or what is a potential need a customer have, when you can address that or to handle the things that are negative, that's how you're successful, because you are on the forefront of that. And so, I'm just reminded of the fact that, life is always in flux, right? The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said that, pantoreia, which literally means that everything's in flow, like the river flows, nothing's ever constant. And so we've been really lucky in business here in the US specifically with just being able to pretty much predict what's going to happen. In the last couple of years, we couldn't predict what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen when the pandemic hit and how that was going to affect our business. And then consequently, with all the supply chain challenges that we're faced, and then as mentioned earlier, the challenges with personnel, that we've heard about the great resignation in my world, and maybe many of yours in the medical industry, is also we had these vaccine mandates that in order for our employees to actually go to site and take care of and accomplish their mission, they had to certify their vaccinations. And so that was new. So all these things have happened. And so what happened, we found ourselves facing things that we had no idea how to predict, and we didn't know how to necessarily respond yet. And so then you get kind of that nervousness of, okay, what can I control? What can we do? So one of the things that we learned that we can control, that we should be reminded, and that is our relationship with customers. So over the last 2 decades, as I've interacted with customers, what my world is oncology. So we manufacture medical equipment that treats cancer. So fundamentally, we help save lives, or at least prolong lives and improve quality of life. So there's a great purpose around what we do. And for the service world in this arena, it's about maintaining equipment and keeping it reliable. When a patient shows up to get treated, They want to show up and get treated the way they're supposed to get treated at the time that they're scheduled to get treated. And so that's what we do. We bring resources to bear to make sure that happens. And obviously that's with doing maintenance, and that's with great personnel that can troubleshoot and solve it. So what happens when you can't get the parts you need, or you got people that can't get the site? We had to pivot and figure out how to make it different and how to be successful. And then as the business leader, service leader side, continuity of business. We've talked about the earlier, just referenced the fact that this continued revenue from a guaranteed dollar, right? That customers have a service agreement that pay us to meet those commitments to keep their equipment running. Well, you renew those by having meetings with customers and discussing their needs and showing the value of the service agreement. All of a sudden, we were faced with the fact that we couldn't meet with our customers. So we had to figure out how to do that and keep our business flowing and keep the revenue streaming, right? So one of the things we've had to learn is, okay, let the parts of the organization handle the things that they got to focus on. Our logistics organization, of being able to just make Herculean efforts to get the products we need, the parts we need, the components we need to keep things going. When it comes to personnel, HR helping us with everything with the personnel, but as a service leader on the ground, what can we focus on? And that is, how do we provide great service, even though we've got to do it a little differently than we've done it before, right? So that's kind of the thing. So my thing today is just to challenge you guys to be reminded of these basic things that help us be successful, right? So obviously we can't ignore the things that we can't control. You still got to think about those. I like Nick's thing about it's not a binary world that you only get to focus on one thing. You gotta focus on, you gotta have attention to all the things that need to get done, right? So how do we not let those things that we can't control consume us? Don't ignore them, employ the right resources for that. We've got to also focus on the main thing that we can control. And I think that's relationship. I've got an image of the coin that's used in AA with the serenity prayer, because you just reminded about that, right? If you focus on those things that you can't control, it can pretty much stress you out and take you off your game. But if you realize there's things that you do have an influence on and put your efforts there and your attention there, I think it can help you be successful. So look, I just tried to keep things, with the KISS method, what are some key things that we can remember, and can we make it in a way that it's easy to reference? So I came up with this idea of the 3 C's, right? And so in the next few minutes, well, I'll just talk about what those are and how I've employed those. And I'm kind of a storyteller, and Vivek told me, he's like, yes, these are good points. Make sure we tell stories. And fortunately, that's kind of the way I communicate anyway. So that works well. And the first C, what we're going to talk about is communication, right? So I came across this quote from this guy, Tony A. Gaskins Jr., who's a life coach. Fundamentally, what he says is he made a lot of mistakes. He used those mistakes to learn. And then now he's employed those learnings to help other people in coaching, and he's developed several businesses that have been successful. So what he says is communication to a relationship is like oxygen is to life. Without it, it dies. And I think we fundamentally get this. We know that you got to communicate, right? But what we're talking about is business relationships, right? Relationships with our customers. Well, the truth is, this is the thing with any relationship, right? I mean, do you know the number one issue in marriage is lack of communication? So we know this. Every relationship we have is either enhanced or has significant tension, whether you have good communication or lack of communication. So when there's a lack of communication, issues are just exasperated. They seem worse than what they really are, right? And so in the absence of communications with our customers, they're going to develop their own thoughts about what they think is the problem, or and they will always blame us for the problem if we don't have that consistent communication with them. So what I want to talk about is the fact that what does that communication look like? All right. One of the things is you got to have a consistent cadence. So this is something that I learned early as a brand new service leader is if I just wait to communicate with the customer when things get bad, then it becomes a very difficult situation for me. But if I develop a constant cadence of communication, then I'm always in front of the customer or communicating with customers, reminding them that I'm here and that we are in this together. And so customers don't always know what they want that to look like, or maybe they've experienced from other vendors that they didn't prefer. So what I always do is kind of come up with suggestions about what that looks like. And usually in my world, it's like a quarterly business review where we go over all the service activities and reliabilities of their equipment during the previous 3 months. And so you kind of just establish this communication that, they see your face, everything's not always stressful, and you can maybe bring their attention to the fact that their equipment is reliable and that they're treating their patients on time and things are going good, because what's going to happen. You're going to have problems sometimes with the equipment. So if that's the only time you communicate with them, then it's always a tense situation. So beyond the cadence, then you've got those urgent or ad hoc communications when the equipment down, when the tool is down, when there's things not working the way it's supposed to be. When you engage and you're there, then you have the opportunity of saying things like, remember in the last quarterly review how we looked at what your clinical availability and your uptime was on your equipment and how good it's been and how your patient satisfaction scores are so high. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the situation right now that none of us could predict it, and we've got to repair the machine, and we're making this happen. But it's that opportunity to remind them of how reliable their stuff is, and the fact that we're not just jumping in there when things are bad. And I gotta really encourage you to don't shy away from the difficult conversations. There are times when we're going to make mistakes. We're going to send the wrong part. We're going to do the wrong thing. A less experienced technician's going to make mistakes. Just own it. And that it builds trust in that relationship. And they realize that you're not afraid to talk about the difficult things. So just one story I've got. I think it was about 2006. I was a local service manager. And was the direct face-to-face interaction with every customer. I had a situation with a customer in Tampa that, their machine has been really reliable, and I had been doing the regular cadence of communications with them. We've got to know each other pretty well. Well, we started having some problems with the machine. And so it went over a period of a couple of weeks, and it looked like it was the same type of problem, although technically it was different problems that kind of looked like it could have been related to the same problem. And so the trust was kind of decreasing a bit. Lo and behold, one night, probably about 6 p.m., my local field engineer called me to tell me that the machine was down again for the same issue. I immediately grabbed my go bag. By the way, I live in Atlanta. I grab my go bag, I get on the airplane, I get down the Tampa as quick as I can. I go help this field engineer. The reality is I wasn't ever a technician, so I couldn't help them with fixing it more than to me moral support and trying to facilitate help if they needed parts or anything. So the bottom line is we didn't get the machine up. It was still down. So I caught a little shut eye that night, got back into the site before the staff showed up. And then when the physician walked in, he was furious when he found out the machine was down. So he told his assistant, get Patrick Dell on the phone right now. And she told him he's actually sitting in your office. So it took the wind completely out of the sail. He walked in and he's just like, you're here. I said, yes, sir. I told you I'm committed to success here. Unfortunately, the machine's down. So we had a conversation. Luckily, the part came in that morning. We got them back up later in the day. But I got to tell you, my willingness to jump in there and communicate, even though we owned it, it was a tough situation. I didn't allow it to escalate worse than that. And so, yes, I had established that regular communication, but when the things were tense and they needed me right then, I put all the personal things aside. I got there. He knew I lived in Atlanta. He knew how quickly I had gotten there. And so that just really enhanced our relationship. And so what that also did, it helped us in the next C that I want to mention. And that next C is credibility, right? So credibility, what is it? It is simply the quality of being trusted and believed in. And I think we would all agree that trust is like the most basic element of any relationship. When trust is broken, it makes it very difficult to have that relationship. But when you can establish that trust and maintain that trust, I mean, that's what customers are looking for when it comes to. They want to trust that our product is going to do what we say it's going to do. They want to trust that our maintenance is going to be on schedule and we're going to meet or exceed their expectations on how we go about doing it. So when it comes to equipment reliability, when a customer enters into a very expensive service agreement with us, I mean, they're basically saying, we're trusting you to maintain this equipment and to fix it quickly so that we can treat our patients. And so the nasty truth in healthcare is that there are some people within our customer sites that are focused really on the patient and when it comes to helping them. Some of them are focused a little more on the financial side. And when that equipment is down, by the way, oncology treatment is probably one of the best revenue generators for hospitals and clinics. It's that department's typically in the black. They make money, and where most hospitals don't make money in most of the treatments. So this is really important on a financial sense for them, but it's also important for those patients that, look, their lives depend on getting treated. So that credibility that they trust us as an organization is huge. And you can see from the screen, I got this quote by Stephen Covey, right? Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. You think about that when you're talking to a customer, if they don't trust you, they're not even going to hear anything you're saying, right? So establishing that credibility and that trust, they may go out on faith that they can trust you in the beginning, but then they watch what you do and can you maintain that credibility? Can you maintain that trust, right? So the goal is doing what you say you're going to do, right? Practice what you preach, walk the talk, whatever saying we want to use, right? It is in order to build, maintain that credibility, you've got to do this stuff. You've got to execute on your commitments. And oftentimes, they don't even realize you're doing it, except the equipment's working. I remember sometime a long time ago say, it doesn't do any good to wink in the dark, right? They're not going to know. So it's important to also, in that regular cadence of communication, part of the way you establish and maintain that credibility is continue to show that you're doing what you're saying you're going to do. And if you're doing that, they often don't necessarily get to see it because everything's just routine and it's good. So bringing it to the surface, focusing on your people that deliver on a consistent basis is huge. So, one curse and blessing of the industry I'm in radiation oncology specifically, is it's actually a fairly small industry here in the US. People know each other, right? So when it comes to credibility, if you've established that trust and that credibility, your reputation will be known throughout the radiation oncology environment. If you fail, that also follows you. Thankfully, in the last 20 years, I've been able to maintain my credibility and have a good reputation. So when I get involved with customers who either know me previously or know my reputation, the credibility is already there. So an interesting story about that. So as a service manager at the local level, I managed most of Florida for those years. But then I became a regional leader in the South for some years. And one time I had a situation in North Carolina where I had a newer manager there that was leading the team, had some struggles on the team. And I began to hear about some challenges with a local hospital system there. And so I flew up there, met with my manager and his team over breakfast, and we talked about what was going to happen at this customer meeting. So the rumor was that they were going to cancel our service agreements because we weren't maintaining the equipment properly. We weren't meeting the expectations of the service agreement. So they began to tell me about this new director they had. They actually affectionately referred to her as the Dragon Lady because she breathed fire every time they came into the room. And so he assured me that I was going to walk into this meeting and just lose a few pounds on a certain aspect of my body. So I was all prepared. We walked into the room, and the director stood up. She's sitting there with her staff, and she has a stern look on her face. She makes a beeline straight to me. I could just feel my service manager for that area. He just tensed thanks to me. And I could hear him in hell, just waiting for what's about to happen. All of a sudden, a smile stretched on her face. She gave me a hug, told me it was good to see me. I asked how my wife was doing, asked if we had any more kids, because in her eyes, we were having kids every year. And it began just completely deflated the situation. And we went and we sat down and we began to talk, and she looked at my local manager. She said, listen, I trust Patrick. He handled a situation similar to this in Florida. His team executed. And if you listen to him and take guidance on what he's doing or what he advises you to do here, I'm sure we're going to overcome our challenges. And so we went through some more things, but that was pretty much it. Well, here's the truth. That team would have been successful if I had never shown up. They had the right plan. They were executing. They needed the customer's trust to just work the plan. But the reality is I brought my credibility into that situation because of the relationship that I had with that customer, with that director. Well, I had already proven with the excellent team that we had down in Florida that we could execute and we could meet their needs. So needless to say, things progressed well because they were going to do what they were going to do anyways, and the machine became much more reliable. So they didn't cancel their service agreement, which we feared. They actually renewed it for multiple years. You know, trust is the glue of life. And so where my new manager hadn't really established that credibility and that trust with the customer yet, I was able to bring that into the conversation and help just enhance their relationship. And you know, and so being able to execute, my team executing in Florida, my team executing in North Carolina helps us see the third C. And that's just consistency, right? I think we all know what consistency is. But if you look at the actual definition of it, it's the quality of always behaving or performing in a similar manner, or of always happening in a similar way. So customers, well, let's just talk about people. We are people, right? We're human. We develop habits of what we prefer. It's oftentimes because of consistency. We go to the same grocery store because they consistently are set up the same way, and we know where to get the stuff we need, and the products, they carry the products that we like. They're consistent in how they delivered it. Wow, does it rock my world when the grocery store decides to move shelves around and change the aisles? I get really disoriented. But we like that. We go to the same restaurants because we're used to it. We like it, right? And so when I think about this in that sense, even from a personal level, I think about one of the greatest fast food restaurants that we have in the US, and that's Chick-fil-A, right? This repetition yields constants create culture. See, Chick-fil-A has a culture of excellence. They say that they're passionate about consistent food quality and also about customer service. And so I have gone to Chick-fil-A's probably, I don't know, easily 10 to 20 different states and many different Chick-fil-A's throughout the states. Sometimes you'll see just a little variation, but the truth is it's pretty consistent wherever you go because they focus on that, and that's who they are. And we know, if you look at reports, Chick-fil-A has the greatest brand loyalty of any fast food restaurant out there. We used to joke in our local community here that we thought that they put something in the chicken because people were so addicted to it. They liked it. But what the truth is people like consistency. They like getting what they know that they expect and that they're going to see. The quality of always behaving and performing in a certain way is difficult sometimes in service, because things are hard to chase down or to know what they are all the time, right? And so in a process of troubleshooting, you hope that whatever problem is will repeat itself so you can get down to what is the crux of the problem. And so over the years that I've been in this industry, we've pretty much have been able to do things the same way and be consistent with the same type of meetings in person, consistent with how we do maintenance by deploying the site and getting there, consistent on getting the parts because we have great relationship with our suppliers and it's there. We always deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case in the last 2 years because we couldn't just go to site when we wanted to. There were hospitals that were preventing us from doing our regular maintenance on equipment, and it's not letting our people on site. Well, if you don't do regular maintenance, then problems creep in. And so we've had to figure out how to deal with that and how to not only sell the fact that us doing their service is important, but how we do service is important. So that's been a little different. But I'm going to tell you, what's been really interesting to me recently, we had a situation where I had a customer that had problems with their equipment. Good news is they could still treat patients. So it wasn't completely down, but it was they had to do workarounds, a little challenge on impacting their schedule and things like that. But fundamentally, they still got to do what they needed to do, and that is to treat patients. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the part that we need to solve the problem. Well, thankfully, because of the relationship we have built with this customer, with our constant communication, with the credibility that we bring, that we consistently were delivering on maintenance and solving problems for them, I had to leverage that. I had to sit down with the customer to let them know that we didn't know when we were going to get the part. Quite frankly, our supplier couldn't detail it for us. And so we didn't have a solution yet, but we were there and we were present and we were still partnering. The customer showed so much grace and that they understand what we're dealing with. That the fact that we had that relationship with the customer gave us the opportunity to draw upon those deposits that we had made in that relationship. Right. I've got on here, those three elements: communication, credibility, and consistency. Think about when you build a house of cards, right? All of those cards are leaning on each other and supporting each other. If you knock one of them down, the house isn't going to stand. And so, consistently delivering allows us to stumble once in a while because we're human and we have things outside of our control. And I think if we build the right relationship with customers, if we're transparent about our challenges, then they're going to work with us. I think we're going to take some time for Q&A here, but fundamentally, look, this isn't rocket science, right? This is stuff we know. But I think this is just a good time to pause and be reminded about relationships, all of our relationships, specifically with our customers, with our employees, with our family, with our friends. All these things work the same way. You invest in the relationship and it gives you the opportunity to work through these challenges when you can't necessarily predict what they're going to be, right? So why are customers going to be loyal to us? Why are they going to continue to buy our products? Why are they going to continue to invest in expensive service agreements? It comes to loyalty, and loyalty doesn't come without strong relationship, without consistency. So my encouragement to you is If you focus on the relationships, that is something that you absolutely can control. And even when it's challenging times, do that. And I think when you get on the other side of these challenges, that customer is still going to be there and they're still going to be loyal. So I think we'll move towards opening up for questions next. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot one of my last things. Sorry. Just a quick visual. Uncertainty will arise. We've figured this out, right? We can't predict everything. But the way we navigate through the chaos is through that relationship. Sorry about that. Almost missed it.
No problem, Patrick. Thank you for that great presentation. I do see one question that's come in. So how have you seen technology or data analytics used to better deliver on those 3 C's?
Yeah, that's another aspect that we have really transformed in the last couple of years at our company. What's interesting to me is for years we talked about that, right? How can we better leverage the information that we get from the machines? How can we better diagnose and solve problems remotely? It was fortuitous that the latest products that we've developed, I'd say since probably in the last 12 years, were all built on digital platforms that allowed us to collect tons of information. So what happened with the challenges with not being able to be in person with customers, it facilitated just an acceleration on how we use that information. So now we actually have, I won't use all the labels, but we have a product now that allows us to have the equipment notifying us about what the challenges are. We've been able to go through and identify what are those key indicators that a failure is coming and what part. And so we've really moved into predictive services, and we've have the opportunity now that the equipment will literally send messages to our field engineers that basically says, I'm seeing this problem and I'm gonna fail in this component, and it gives our engineers the opportunity to go ahead and get the parts on hand and arrive sometimes before the customer even knows that they're there. We're also, from an analytics standpoint, we're being able to see across our fleet what's the most common things that we're seeing and how that helps us to look at increasing reliability, to making changes. Also helps us with reduction in cost because of the fact that we don't have to spend as much time troubleshooting because we've got the analytics to help us understand what the problem is. So this has also helped us in our relationships with the customers by being more informed about their problems and then communicating what we're seeing. But I will say it was a little challenging at first because our reputation had been where the customers are so used to our local engineers being like part of their family, face to face. And all of a sudden we're able to fix equipment remotely without somebody even going to site was a big change for them. But because of the timeliness of it, they bought into the idea too. So without technology, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now and overcoming some of these challenges.
Excellent. I would love to ask more questions. I'm sure there'll be some more, but Patrick, I think we're going to have to move to the next one because we're going to be a little tight for time otherwise. So if you don't mind stopping your share so I can share my screen. And more importantly, actually, I'm just going to have Leo bring up his screen. So Patrick, first of all, thank you very much for doing that. Very appreciated. I know you have a plane to catch soon. Hang around as much as you can.